as a business leader, have you considered the impact and influence that a cross-cultural team has on your success and that of the business? Every one of us, we have teams that are made up of different cultures and backgrounds and belief systems, all of those things fueling how we operate, the decisions that we make, the innovations we create, and as leaders, the success that we have and we generate for ourselves and for the business. Now, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to having a cross-cultural team. There's even challenges when it comes to trust and engagement and connection. So today we're going to get into all of that with our guest, Liu Liu, who is going to share with us just what it takes to really embrace cross-cultural teams and really take advantage of all of those great ideas and opinions and backgrounds and do's and don'ts that they bring from their own experiences and their own expertise. So we're digging deep into how to build trust in a cross-cultural team. Welcome to Shedding the Corporate Bitch, the podcast that transforms female corporate executives into powerhouse leaders by showing them how to shed the challenges and overwhelm, along with any fear, insecurity, self-doubt, and negativity holding them back. I'm your host, Bernadette Bose of Ball of Fire Coaching, bringing you powerhouse discussions each week to share tips, advice, and sometimes tough love so you create the riches in your work and life you deserve. Liu, how are you? So nice to have you.
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm excited to talk to you, especially around this conversation around cross-cultural teams. And I find the subject matter, and when I was looking into the work that you do, I find it really fascinating where you're kind of focused solely on trying to help leaders navigate the cross-cultural divide, so to speak, because it is very trying and very challenging for some, while it's more natural for others. So first, as we get started, and before we do, actually, I would love to have you just share a little bit about yourself to our listeners and viewers.
Sure. As you can tell from my name, Liu Liu, so I like to joke with people, say I'm made in China. And so I grew up in a city in the southwest of China called Kunming, so which actually has quite a strong historical connection with the Americans, because during the Second World War, that's where the Flying Tiger, the General Schneider and his pilot volunteers based to help the Chinese to fight the Japanese, and also the starting point of the Burma Road. Yeah, so there's sort of historical connection with the U.S. Army and so on and so forth. So fast forward, I was working in the university in that place, and then where I met my wife. So I was the foreign affairs secretary in a language center in the university, and where I met my wife from the UK. There's also a place I started working with the international community, if you like. So as the language center, we received students from over 100 countries. So it was fascinating. So they're really the starting point of me working with people cross-cultural, cross-country. And then when we moved to the UK, I started working in a organization, again, international organization. I'm still there. This is an international, like charitable organization, help people in 50 countries.
Oh, wow.
So again, that gave me a great privilege to work with people from different countries as a manager. So yeah, so that's my kind of story. That's how I'm passionate about this, but also that's where I gained my experience of what worked and what doesn't work. Yeah.
Nice. And what would you find, before we dive into the whole building trust, on a team, what have you found to be your greatest lesson that you have taken from all the work that you've done in this space?
I think the greatest lesson as a manager or as people working in an international environment, I think nowadays is actually quite a commonplace. The greatest lesson for me is I say, actually, don't be fooled by the fact that everybody speaks English. So although people speak English, but they don't speak the same language. I think that is the biggest lesson. And this very often trips people because under the language surface, so that's how people behave and very differently because of the cultural background. And many people, particularly managers, end up overlooking that fact.
So, can I kind of surmise for myself that what that might look like is managers assume because they can speak English, they understand them, and yet they don't spend time really understanding them as a person with their backgrounds, with where they came from, their belief systems. And therefore, that's where a lot of the challenge can come between managers and their people.
That's right. That's one aspect of the issue. The other is actually you touched on try to understand. I think it's very important. There is a tendency for people to just for all of us, we like to think my culture is the only right culture. Everybody else is wrong. So
Welcome
that's a
to
tendency.
America.
Everybody, including myself. There's tendency that we have to really work hard to first recognize that and then overcome that.
Right. Yeah. And we're also not talking just about those leaders that might be assigned to an international function or location. We're also just talking, if we use the UK or the United States, we're also talking to those who are here in the United States, the companies in the United States, yet their employees base is made up of people from all over the world.
That's right. That's correct. So when you're talking about cross-cultural teams, there are different kind of scenarios. One is, like you said, people are made from different cultural background, either in person or even remotely now, very even more challenging. And then the other is you as a manager or leader being assigned to a different foreign country to work on a project. Right. So the scenario two is to work on the project, but the team you're working in are solely from that country. Okay. The third one is actually you are assigned to a second country to work on a project, but the team is also assembled from an international background. So that's become even more trickier.
Right, right. Yes, yes. And, I would say in my corporate background, I definitely had probably that second scenario where I worked internationally and had people in other countries and other cultures. And then even as in my role today, I work with clients all over the world. And so it's just a fascinating conversation. And now your focus, especially for today's conversation, is all around trust. And I found that to really hit my heart because I thought, oh, wow, building trust in a cross-cultural team. So what are the aspects or factors that kind of go into someone needing to build trust within their team?
Sure. I think this is the important part of the whole cross-cultural intelligence, if you like. So when I talk about cross-cultural intelligence, I meant the fact that how much you know about your own culture, your own behavior. And then the second is how much you know about others and other behaviors, cultural behaviors. So it's two sides of the matter. So building trust is almost like step one as a manager. Mm-hmm. So if you were whichever like the scenario you are end up with, step one, you need to build a trust with your team, with your peer or your boss. That's where it becomes tricky because if I would say divide the world in a kind of rough divide, there are two groups of countries, if you like. So I call that hot climate cultural countries and the cold climate countries. You probably have heard about it. And each group has some characteristics. Like the hot climate countries hot climate cultural countries, sorry,
That's okay.
are quite largely relationship based, and where the cold climate cultural countries are task oriented and logic based. So the cold one you are talking about, the Northern European Anglo-Saxon culture based by large, or any countries that actually have large contingency of this population, like in Argentina, in South African, the white population. But the hot climate country, you're looking at quite a large number. Yeah, Asia, African, Middle East. So when you are faced with, I mean, these different kind of people,
Right. So before you move on, Lou, help us understand what industries, speaking of business, what industries would fit into a hot climate culture? And what industries are we talking about that are task oriented in a cold climate?
I would say it's hard to define. I think if you say, look at the industry, right? So the cold climate culture industry, you're looking at, sorry, largely the innovation side. For example, they have the ideas, they have the design, they have the ideas, but then they often outsource the implementation or manufacturing the ideas into products into the hot climate cultural countries. So your typical example is like the Apple. Everybody use Apple in the US, large. So the company in the US are only in charge of design the products. So, but all the manufacturing is being done in China and then some other countries. If you look at the other end of the product, like the Nike in America, you could have sneakers. So in the UK, it's called trainers. So again, a Nike company in the US, we are only looking at the design, but the manufacture is all done in other countries. Yeah. So that's a rough divide. So it seems by the ideas, innovation seems to be largely in the cold climate countries, and where the implementation and realization of those products. But although that's changing, but it's a simple generalization.
Right, right. And what kind of challenges does that create, especially for those that, like you said, they have one part of their business is done in a hot and then another part is done in the cold and vice versa.
Yeah.
What kind of roadblocks does that create for a team leader?
Yeah. So if I can circle back to say the first thing about trust, in different groups of countries, people build trust very differently. Let me give you an example. When in my many years back, when I was dispatched to Cambodia, I was put in charge of all the programs in Cambodia. And then on my first trip there, I have to meet with all the so-called our local partners, people we work with. And there are two groups of those organizations. One is headed up by the expats, by European, by Dutch, by the Americans, and then the other are local ones headed up by the Cambodians. So how I build trust is I have to use different approach. So for the American expat organizations, they literally set me down, gave me almost like second interview. The thing is that they want to know what qualifies me to lead up that program, because that's a typical thinking in the task-oriented cold climate cultural people. They want to see the reason and logic behind it. When it comes to building trust, they want to see your performance. They want to see what you can contribute, what you can bring to the table. So that's very key. So none of those small talks. So, but they want to know. And I had a similar situation a few months back in the Netherlands. And one of the CEO in the Netherlands organization asked at the meeting table to actually a German colleague said, "What makes you to sit at this table?" I thought that's very blunt, but that's the way they ask.
That's the way. That's the
Yeah.
way they are. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, back to the Cambodia story. Even with the Cambodians, I know I can't even talk about business to start with because they don't know me. They don't trust me. So, well, with them, to build trust takes the relationship approach. I actually invited them to meal, to the hotel, to drink tea, have a meal together. We talk about non-related, non-work related issues. Your journey in the organization, your family, anything but work. And then they get to know you as a whole person. They feel they know you, they're relaxed. And then they trust you. Then we gradually move on to work. But still, and then, yeah, one day later or the day after, then we go into the office to talk about work. And then we are like, yeah, we have relationship already, so much easier. So that's that's the same thing. Yeah. In most of the Asian and African countries, you need to just get to Middle East as well. You need to spend time to get to know them, let them to know you
Right.
as a person. Yeah.
So should any manager leader who is maybe newly assigned or maybe they've been around for a while but they haven't built the relationship or the trust in the way that they should they actually plan a couple of days on their trip just to get in there and get to know them before they even get to day one of the work?
Absolutely. That's what I would suggest strongly. So I know it sounds very counterintuitive to our task oriented cultural people, but yeah, they will see that it's what a waste of time. They want to dive straight into the business.
Yes.
But to build trust, yeah, like you say, building the time to allow people to get to know you is vitally important. So even whether it's on a business trip or even virtually, like this kind of meeting,
Right.
I tell you what, very often when I have catch-up meeting with my African colleagues, an hour meeting, we can end up spending 15, 20 minutes just talk about family and all that. And you have to just bear that in mind. That's the way it is.
So Americans would have to sit on their hands and pull like a rubber band to keep them
Yeah,
patient.
yeah, exactly. So, but then on the other hand, it cuts both ways. Then for the people from the hot climate country, they need to understand as well. It's not rude to you. This is just how the other half of the world conduct business.
Right. Yes.
They want to dive straight into the point. So it cut both ways.
Right. And curious as to whether you found throughout all your years of experience if one way works more effectively than the other.
I would say that is actually there's another part of the issue. There are different aspects of a business as you understand. So it's getting to know, trust each other is only the step one.
Mhm.
So then I think when it comes to managing money, time, deadline, then the how to divvy up the tasks, devise a plan. So all those can be done very differently. So I think the key thing is about understanding the different approaches and then work out a agreed method.
Mhm.
Because yeah, otherwise all we end up doing is frustrating each other. And I was actually often thinking this is very much a blind spot, and people get really frustrated. And also for leaders, particularly newly appointed leaders and managers, they can end up doubting themselves when they stumble across those obstacles. They tried all the, if you think of all the management training people were given, even you talk about Harvard Business School, it's all about the hard tasks.
Right.
But nobody actually tells you how to deal with people. Maybe the team building, true, but not the cultural issue.
I think it's absolutely true. I think it's
Yeah.
absolutely true. And at the same time, Have you found that there's a great lack of also when it comes to training or learning in regards to communication? Like you said, that example with the Netherlands and with the German, where someone just simply said very directly, well, that's not the way it's going to happen, or I need this from you, as opposed to some others need it to be not even relationship based. It needs to be a little bit more collaborative than directive. Like I always say, ask questions, don't make statements. So do you find that the communication differences also immediately affect the trust that you're capable of building in that type of cross-cultural team?
Yes, it does. I think the building the trust is really much. We're talking about the like building a skyscraper. Building the trust, if you like, you lay a good foundation. Once you build trust with each other through different ways, then the next step becomes easier, so that you can move into the business faster, and then to think actually you understand that there's a differences approach. But communication, again, is still a constant challenge, particularly comes to email communication. So it's very tricky. It can be really tricky. But even verbal communication. After all these years I lived in England, there is a very famous phrase the English people use. You never know what it means. They always say, this is very interesting. After you did a presentation or give a product introduction, people will say, oh, this is very interesting. So how do you interpret that?
Right. Right. In the South here, we have a saying, oh, bless your heart. So how would you interpret that?
Yeah.
Some might interpret it as like, oh, that's nice. They're blessing, my well-being. And it's not what it means at all.
Yeah, exactly. So likewise, this is interesting. It's similar. Yeah, so you must be insane. The underterm is.
And so how do you guide your leaders to kind of better build that foundation, understand and learn the differences, set those expectations, learn how each other want to communicate? Kind of what is your approach to all of that?
My approach actually is, first of all, you need to really recognize this is the issue. So, because otherwise, it doesn't matter what things people do or I do, will just end up with external. So the change needs to happen both external and internal. I think the manager needs to recognize this is an issue if they are really in pain, or this could be the issue if they are in doubt. Then to really open their mind to explore with people like myself and with others to see actually what can we do to really address step by step kind of breakdown of the whole business process. At each stage of the process, what are the cultural issues we need to be mindful of, we need to deal with? Yeah.
Right. And say it's a leader that just amongst their team, they have a lot of cultural differences. They have a lot of individuals that come from different parts of the world. What have you found to be the biggest struggle of those managers and leaders when it comes to them even taking time to understand their people beyond them getting the work done?
I think obviously time pressure is, but I would say another part of the challenge is attitude, because from what I observe, people generally fall into two categories. You are either not aware, and that's kind of benign attitude, or people refuse to just say, you just need to tell the line, do it my way. So yeah, normally fall into these two categories.
Right. I would say unaware and you don't care. Those are the two categories. You either are not aware or you just don't care.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the other day I was talking to a friend, actually. He's in the banking business, and he manages me team is from India. And he said, I wish they could just do the way we do it.
Well, I mean, I have to admit, Lou, that for a long time in corporate, when I worked in corporate, I had a my way or the highway type of attitude. And I learned severely after I left corporate how damaging and how limiting, because it's very limiting. It's very small minded, if you have that, take that attitude and that approach, especially in this subject around cross culture. There's so much each of
Mm,
us can learn from each other, right?
mm. That's right. That's right. I think it's like you say, is to really drop that my way or the highway. Just actually, there are so many ways of the phrase goes what there's so many ways of skin a cat.
Yes.
So yeah, just and also bear in mind if you look around the world, when you're going to a country to start business, you just ask yourself, this country, this civilization has existed as long as they must have been, they must have a way of doing things.
Right. They must be doing something right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And learn from it.
Yeah.
But do you find that there's too many managers, and I hesitate to call them leaders, but there's too many managers that just let their ego get in the way?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. That's a whole new dimension about how you, where do you place your security and identity?
Right. Right. What do you do as a global leader and coach yourself? What do you do to help those type of individuals and teams to break that down?
Well, we could look at it from a business approach to say ultimately your target from your boss is to deliver the results. So either it's profit or product. So the way to look at it, to break it down, is that if this is giving you so much pain, then why look at it differently? That could actually to give you a better result, maybe less stressful. Yeah, you can get a better to feed the ego if you like, a better praise from your boss or better bonus. So if you do it just differently.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, because I just think this subject is so critical and so powerful. And I'm so thrilled that there's someone like yourself that are specifically targeting this type of cultural shift in the business world because it's so
Yeah,
needed.
definitely. It's really key. And sometimes people don't even know they walk straight into that. The other day I was in London in a network event, and person told me they had a Chinese delegation come in to talk about business. At the table set, and the head of the delegation from the China side, of course, they said to spread it, and then the head in the middle. And then because there's a screen of the projector on one side, then the English side, they just all scrunched up to be close to the projector. So that's then immediately the Chinese side being felt like they are disrespected because they don't have the counterpart to
Right,
talk and face
right,
accordingly. So, but if you don't know, you don't know.
right.
And
I
then
have to, I have to admit when I can't remember what delegation this was, but I had a group from Asia come over. I was like 28 years old and we were working on a technology project and they handed me their business card
mm,
and I kind of took it and put it immediately in my pocket and then was sternly corrected as far as you don't do that. You
yeah,
look at the card, you turn it over, look at the other card, you acknowledge it, and you never put it away until obviously they're gone. But that was a big lesson early in my career
yeah,
that made me slow down and pay attention to wanting to learn how to best collaborate and engage with
mm,
other cultures.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So, what one tip would you share with our listeners and viewers who are leaders and who most likely have a cross-cultural team, what would you tell them that one thing that they should be focusing on?
Yeah. So it is really hard to choose the one thing you have to focus on. I think the one thing I would say is to say to the leaders and managers is that there are many different ways of doing things. And there are many different ways that could be better than the way you have. And I think it's important if you really want to deliver good and better results and open your eyes and open your mind. Yeah. And learn from the others. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Liu, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. And for everyone too, listening or watching, please go to lulucoaching.com, learn all about him and his work. It is fascinating and it's something so critical in the business world that please reach out to him and find out how he can help you and your organization as well. Thank you, Liu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I often say this is the one missing management tool everybody knows they need.
Which is what?
Cross-cultural intelligence is the one missing management tool.
Yes. Yeah. And it needs to be talked about more and more often.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Thank you, Liu. I appreciate it so much. What a powerful conversation with a powerhouse, that being Liu Liu. And lulucoaching.com if you want to check him out. But in our conversation, we really delved into just what we need to consider as leaders when we do have people on our team that come from different cultures, different backgrounds, different belief systems, different values, different work experiences. And instead of kind of pushing those aside, really leaning in and leveraging them, because who doesn't want new ideas, new opinions, new views, new solutions, new opportunities in order to grow their business, but also themselves as leaders. And the few things that I took away with, which oftentimes we overlook as just simple oversights, but we talked about the breakdown in awareness that many leaders have when it comes to really seeing, let alone listening and learning and understanding the differences that our team members bring to the table because of where they come from and what it takes in order for a manager to really be attentive to that and to take advantage of that in learning and optimizing all of those differences to the benefit of the business. He also went into the fact that in order to build trust, which is the foundation of any relationship, we need to be more patient and we need to be more deliberate around how we initially engage. And he used examples such as hot and cold climate type of businesses. Hot climates, he defines as those that are very relationship oriented, those that you better show up a couple of days early if you're going to a new client or working with a team that comes from a hot climate, because they really want to build trust based on your relationship with them, getting to know them, understanding them. So you need to build some time in before you jump into business in order to do that. And then there's cold climates, those that are very task oriented, those that do want to get down to business right away. The challenges occur when there's a blending of those two different types of individuals on a team or across teams. In order to really understand how both of those need to work together to be most productive and most effective, you need to kind of be more patient and deliberate about the questions you're asking, the expectations that are being set, the understanding that's being gained between all the parties involved. And then another thing he really got into talking about is the stereotypes and the prejudices that do exist in ourselves when it comes to working with cultures and working with different backgrounds and different types of individuals, and how as leaders, we need to put those prejudices and stereotypes aside because everyone contributes to the success of the business and everyone has different experiences they could be bringing to you and to the organization in order to really realize not only their goals, but your goals as well. So he was just kind of full of great information that I think a lot of us take for granted when we do have complex teams made up of different people from different cultures. And if we as leaders can really dig in to understand that and understand them, then success is a gimme. I would love your feedback and comments in regards to this conversation around building trust on cross-cultural teams. What are your thoughts? What have you done? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And what do leaders need to know when it comes to working with those from other cultures and other backgrounds? So go to LinkedIn at Bernadette Bose, and I would love to hear what your comments are or any feedback that you might have, even questions you might have. I'd love to help and contribute. So I look forward to having you right back here next week for another episode. So take care, everyone.